Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. It's Chad Himes here and Bob Stewart there. Bob, how are you doing today?
I'm still at the lake, Chad. Still at the lake.
We
put these things out like, who knows? It could be weeks between. Yeah. So like, I've just been at the lake for weeks, I guess.
There you go. Enjoy it. Pretend that you've been there forever, even though we just recorded an episode where everybody knows you're at the lake house, which might actually come after this one. This could be very confusing.
Yeah, we don't know.
How's the lake house working out for you?
Pretty
Other
good,
than you
man.
don't get to use it.
Yeah. A lot of people like to rent this place. Actually, I'll tell a quick story here before we bring on our guest. I'm actually maybe embarrassed about this. Yesterday was the first day I haven't caught a fish here, Chad. Every other day we've been out here, I've caught fish, multiple fish, right? And yesterday I put my pole in, and one of my boys was doing some casting, and I needed the line to get a little longer, so I loosened the tension on it, and I whatever, and then we casted it, and then we went off, and we were doing something up on the other side of the house, and I come back, and all my line's gone on my pole. So there is a fish out. I feel horrible about this. There's a fish swimming around our lake right now that's got to have 300 yards of line on the end of his lip, but it was gone. Like, I'm like out there, and I'm like, the pole was all going a different direction. I'm like, oh, there's a fish on. I get out, and the line's gone. I'm like, oh, I forgot to turn the tension on. Total
Ben would
rookie.
be so disappointed in you.
Total rookie fisherman move. And the funniest part about it is, right before we went up to go on the other side of the house, my youngest, Carter, who's 6, is like, Dad, we can't leave the pole in the water. And I'm like, it'll be fine. Like, if a fish gets on there, when we come back, it'll just be on the pole, And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. So when we get back and it's gone, he like is standing off to the side. He's got this look on his face, and I turn over and I look at him. I'm like, go ahead, say it. And he's like, I told you so. I'm like, oh, yes, you did tell me so.
Nothing worse than a 6-year-old being able to, I told you so.
So we've been out here probably, let's say 40 different days. The fishing out here is unbelievable. It's the first day we have not caught a fish out here, but we've got the story. Yeah, we didn't. We have a fish. We did. We just didn't get it. He caught us, maybe, or something. I don't know. Anyway,
his friends are probably making fun of him. They're probably pulling on his line, going, "Hey, buddy, how's it going, buddy?" Right?
Yeah.
Either that, or he's now the leader of the fish school because he survived.
I don't know if I've told you this, Chad. I don't think I've mentioned this on the podcast. 3 different times that we've been out here, we just put the rods out, and I put them in a spot so 3 different times a fish has pulled the rod off the dock, and I've had to go running into the lake to grab the fishing pole. One time my neighbor lady was sitting over there, and I got up to I was like this deep to get the fishing pole out, and she's clapping. She's like, good job. I'm like embarrassed. Anyway, yeah, lots of fun to be had on the lake.
You need better supports to hold the pole in place. All right.
That's our next. So a new dock is my next big project. I'm sitting on our new deck that we dumped a bunch of money into this year. Next year, it's a new dock. Yeah, I'll have some fishing pole holders on there for sure.
Okay. Maybe I'll come visit then, because fishing is my ultimate sport.
There you go.
Not happening. All right, so let's get to it, folks, because I don't believe any fishing tale, right? All fishing tales are lies. I once caught one this big, right? They're all lies, including Bob. He probably just made that whole thing up just to give his kid a little I told you so love. Who knows?
Maybe.
And let's get to what we're really going to talk about today, which, Bob, I have no idea. Right, I have no idea what we're going to talk about today, because when I asked our guest before we got going, is there anything you really want us to ask you or anything you really don't want us to ask you? Her answer was, no, I'm pretty much an open book. So who knows where we go? I know what we're supposed to talk about, yet I've been doing this long enough with Bob Stewart that we're going to be talking about the paintings on the wall behind her. Let's get to it and bring Racheal Cook to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Racheal, thanks for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, thank you both for having me. I've been sitting here just laughing as you're telling the story, because it reminds me of people that I have in my life too. And I hope you keep that fishing rod and don't lose it next time.
You fish, Racheal?
I grew up on the water. So I grew up in Gloucester, Virginia, which is right on the river. I grew up on boats and fishing and being out on the water all the time. So it kind of just cracked me up a bit.
So Racheal, that was a great avoidance to the question. Do you fish?
I mean, I'll cast the line out, but I'm not holding the fish. That's what husbands are for.
That's what You're like my 8-year-old. He'll cast a line out. He's not a big fan of holding the fish.
Is he
Sure.
No,
putting
I'm
the
not going to
worm on
hold
it,
it.
Bob? Is he putting the worm on himself?
No, we're not doing that yet. No.
All right, so you're doing the gross stuff. He's taking the credit.
Yeah, you got it.
Got it.
You got it.
All right. Racheal, do us a favor as we get into it. I don't read bios. Introduce yourself to our audience. Let them know who's here joining us today.
Sure. I am the founder of the CEO Collective and the host of the Promote Yourself to CEO podcast, where we work exclusively with women entrepreneurs about how they can sustainably scale their business without sacrificing their life, their health, or their family in the process.
Boy,
I'm
that was
also a
simple and
mom
easy.
of 3 kids. I have 14-year-old twins. I have an 11-year-old. And like you both, I am in the throes of back to school season and juggling all of the things
Wait, you have
as
you say
we get into it.
14-year-old twins? Was it?
14-year-old twins are freshmen in high school this year.
Are they identical? Are they fraternal?
No, boy-girl twins.
Okay.
So they didn't play that game with you where they pretended I'm the other person and stuff.
No, they can't do
Okay.
that.
Got it.
Thank goodness. I'd be in so much trouble.
my 2 of my best friends in the whole world, my college roommates are twins, and they're identical twins, and these boys look exactly alike. Like, it took me probably 3 months when I got to know them to be able to tell them apart, and they would do all sorts of crazy games like that, Chad, for sure.
Absolutely. I would too. If I had a twin, I would absolutely do it. And Racheal, no, I'm not having to do the back to school thing. Mine is grown, gone, and I'm done with that. Thank goodness. Right.
Chad, it's
Okay.
fun. My boys are here. They've kind of circled around here, and the
Yep.
people that listen to the podcast know that I've got 3 boys. 2 of them are the younger ones here. Carter just screamed from the side. They still look exactly alike because Tyson and Lance, Uncle Tyson and Uncle Lance, are still in our world, and he's not lying. They still look exactly alike.
I wouldn't think they would have changed, barring one of them doing some plastic surgery or something.
Sure.
Bob, I don't have the statistics on our podcast, Bob. If I put you on the spot, what percentage of our listeners do you think are female?
50%.
Do you think we're 50-50? Do you think we're predominantly more one sex or the other?
I think we're probably right down the middle.
Okay.
I don't know. Can we see that stuff in like our analytics back there? Like, maybe we'll have to ask Dave.
Dave would know that stuff, and he doesn't share all that information with us. He doesn't want to.
Racheal, let me ask you a question. Why? No, you're female. Maybe that's the answer, but I feel like it might be slightly deeper than that. Like, why did you decide to focus on female entrepreneurs
So,
or CEOs?
long story short, when I finished,
please don't make them short. Bob
Okay,
clearly does not make long stories short.
I went in to get my MBA, and from undergrad, graduate, my background is in entrepreneurship and small business. I was raised by 2 entrepreneurs. I've grown up in small business, so I always knew I wanted to support small businesses. I was recruited into the world of consulting, and I was the only woman who was working as a consultant for businesses in an office of 50. So 49 men and then just me. This was in the early 2000s, and it was
It's not like we're not talking like the 60s here, right? Like, this is not that long ago.
Not that long ago, but pre-Me Too. And as a young woman in that environment, it was not a healthy environment for me. It was just very much like very toxic masculinity that I was surrounded by. So I left and I decided to start my own consulting business, working with people that I thought were doing really great work. What I discovered in the process of starting my own business, also, by the way, I got pregnant with twins 6 months after I started my business. So I had my twins in 2010. And at the time, every coach I was looking for, all the information I was looking for, was not written or created for women entrepreneurs by women entrepreneurs who were starting businesses, having babies, juggling all of these things. And I remember paying so much money, to be honest, to go to these conferences and events and hire these coaches. And they would give me advice that I just was sitting there going, I physically cannot do that. I have 2 infants at home, and my husband was still working a full-time career. And as I started sharing my experience, I realized there has just been a big gap in the world of entrepreneurship and small business. For such a long time, women couldn't run small businesses. In fact, the Small Business Ownership Act for women didn't get signed until the 80s.
And there's
So
crazy, like
women,
prior to that was women in some states, it might have been national, had to have like their husband co-sign on any
yeah,
loan, for example. Like, yeah, it's
exactly.
nuts.
And so there was a lot of factors in place that kept women from getting into the world of entrepreneurship. So it makes sense that there's not a lot of information or advice or coaching consulting more tailored towards the fact that we tend to be the primary parent taking care of kids. If you have elderly parents, that tends to fall on women. And 40% of women also have health issues that can impact their ability to work. So there are just a lot of factors that I was frustrated about because I was going to these events and spending so much money just to give advice that did not apply to me. And I realized as I started sharing that there were a lot more women who needed to find a different way. And what's been interesting is, like what comes around goes around. I've been doing this work for 15 years. And the way that I've been helping women build their businesses, we have a life first approach. We talk about building the life you really want first and then building the business to fully support it. And what's funny is things have shifted. Like the world of entrepreneurship has shifted. I think a lot of people want to enjoy their life more. And so I'm actually getting a lot of couples. I have a lot of women who have retired husbands, gotten to the point where their husbands can quit their job so they can come in on the business. And now they've got freedom that they never even knew was possible because they've kind of unhooked from the old paradigm of just hustle and grind it out to someday retire at 70.
Can you,
Okay.
so can
Go
you
ahead.
talk for, I like the concept of like building the business around the life I want. Most
Yeah.
people, I think you know, get out of school or whenever that is. It's, high school, or we go through college, or we go even further. You got an MBA. It's I think you said, um, and we like find a job, and then
Yeah.
generally build your life around that job, right? And you don't want to do it that way, but so like if I was somebody setting out to say I want to build my life and then figure out the job part, like how do I turn that on its head? How do you go about doing that? Because it's not seemingly like the traditional route.
No, it's not because we all went through a very clear pipeline to churn out workers, right? The
Yeah.
education system is designed to churn out workers. And if you asked a 18 to 20-year-old like how many jobs they knew about, they probably could only come up with 10 or 12, to be honest. Like they just do not know what the opportunities are out there. So they're choosing from a very limited pool. Instead of choosing a job or a career path without really understanding what's out there, you have to start with what do you want your life to look like? What are your priorities? If you want to be able to travel, if you want to be able to work from home, if you want to be able to raise a family, if you simply really have hobbies that you enjoy and you want to be able to prioritize whatever it is, I mean, it might be getting up and going to CrossFit every single day for 3 hours. It might be
Chad, did you
sitting in
plant
a
her on
hammock
here?
and reading a
No,
book.
Why did you?
that's got nothing to do with me, Bob.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. She went from you, CrossFit, to sitting in the hammock reading a book. That's what it is, Rachel. That's what I want to be doing. It's not
Well, and I
CrossFit in
think
the morning.
that's the thing. Like everybody's different and unique. And I think a lot of times we just keep going down that path and we don't ask ourselves questions about, will this actually let me have the life I live? Because when I was in traditional consulting, I was on the road all the time. I was about to get married, and the only day off I had Sundays. And those were the Sundays I was at home, not traveling to see people. I was so exhausted and burned out. Working out, taking care of myself, there was no time for that. We wanted to have kids, but literally, I had a boss who said, you're going to wait until you're, in your mid 30s before you start trying to have kids, right? I was like, are you kidding me right now? First of all, that's illegal as hell. And second of all, that's like, yes, I do want to have kids. And they literally were telling me this career is not going to give you the life you want. And I think the biggest thing you can do is just look at the people who've been doing it for 10 or 20 years. Do you
Mm,
want their life?
that's good.
And
That's
that
good
was a
advice.
huge wake up call for me because, again, I was in this consulting company surrounded by all these men who were making so much money. It was ridiculous. Like you go into the parking lot and it's the BMWs and the Mercedes, and they have, all the very expensive suits and everything. They were often on their second divorce. If they had kids, they didn't see them. They were incredibly unhealthy. And they were working all the time because that's all they had. They had nothing else in life other than working. So I really started questioning very early on, like, do I want to work just to have the trimmings of success? Or do I want to actually have the life I want? And the life I want has very little to do with all the flashy things and very much to do with the flexibility and freedom to do the things I want to do.
It's tricky because as you start down your career path, and I guess, look, we can make decisions to change this at any point. So somebody could be listening
Yep.
right now, they're in their late 30s and they're like, man, I'm stuck in this career path. No, you could make a decision to change it. But the I feel like, when do you even actually know what you want in life? Like that's a right, because like in my 20s, I didn't know what the hell I wanted in life. And so I went down this path of, maybe I thought I wanted the fancy car and
Mhm.
you get to a point where you're like, it becomes increasingly harder to change, right? To change the path, because those guys that might be on their second divorce and now they got alimony payments, they got
Alimony.
child support, they got a mortgage, that they're like, the deeper you get into your responsibilities, the harder it is to go, this is not the life I wanted. Hold on, I messed that up. Let me do
Yeah.
something else, right? So it's like, I agree. Like, everything you're saying, I agree. And at the same time, I'm like, and it's hard because
Yeah.
in my 20s, I had no idea what I wanted, to be able to build something around the thing that I was like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
And I think this is how actually a lot of people learn. We all learn the hard way. We got to,
Yeah.
take our hits along the journey. And often ending up in a situation that's not right for you, pretty quickly. You're miserable all the time. You just know this isn't it. You get to a point where you're unfulfilled, you're exhausted, you hate going to work or you hate what you're doing. The biggest thing is you just got to get the courage to do something different. And it's so much easier to do something different when you don't have all of those responsibilities. But regardless, you have to figure out like what your definition of success is for you and think about it in the context of all the different areas of your life, not just financial success. I think financial success is only one marker that we should be aiming for. If that's the only one though, you end up at the end of your life, congratulations, you won capitalism, but who's there with you? What's your
Yeah.
quality of life? How's your health holding up? Are there people that are a part of your life? I think those are the things that it's hard to know that when you're younger. As you get older, I'm in my 40s now, you start to have things become more crystal clear about what really matters.
Okay, so let me add to kind of go deeper on Bob's question, and I've got this other question I'm waiting to ask you. Yet you're in your mid 40s, you just said.
Yeah,
Now you happen to be following a path you want. Yet you could just as easily not be.
sure.
You could be a teacher, you could be an accountant sitting there, and you could be like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. Yet you are in a situation, you personally, you've got 3 kids, right? So you've got obligations. Obviously, you've got a husband that's bringing in an income as well. How do you change? Right? Like
Yeah,
Bob's saying, right? It's a challenge. You didn't know in your 20s what you wanted. Now, you seem to have quickly figured it out and saying, hey, wait, this is missing. This is what I want. As the kids came along, you shifted it a little, probably into, well, I want flexibility to be able to be a mom and be home for. But how does our audience go about it going, the light bulb just went on, I'm doing something I don't want to be doing, or I'm just not doing it in the way I want to be doing it. Maybe I want to do
yeah,
it, yet I want to change the priorities. Where's step one? How do I go about changing if I'm realizing, as I hear you right now, I'm not
yeah.
living my ultimate life?
And their reality is the majority of entrepreneurs starting businesses right now are in their 40s. Women in their 40s are the fastest growing demographic of new small business owners that have just started their business in the last few years. And the biggest place we're seeing them come from is they are making lateral transitions, meaning taking the professional level work they used to do, and instead of working for another organization, now they're going on their own. That is usually one of the easiest transitions for a lot of them to make.
So
But
what I'm
stepping
hearing is
back even
stay in your
further,
lane, right? What I'm hearing there is stay in your lane. You can change who you're answering to. It's not that all of a sudden I got to say, oh, I'm a teacher, I should now do tutoring and homeschooling and I can change what that looks like. I shouldn't necessarily say, oh, I've got to go start making something that I can sell.
actually say that's kind of a smaller view than I would see for a lot of teachers. A
Okay.
massive industry right now is in adult education, online education. People who can build curriculums are in high demand, and you can build curriculums for corporations. You can build curriculums for HR training and recruiting. You can build curriculums for online business owners. There's so many opportunities there that teachers have a unique skill set for. So I think the first thing is really to start doing an audit and figuring out what are the skills that I have, taking away the label of whatever my job title is, but what are the skills that I have and what do I want to lean into? Are there skills I need to make a shift and to make an adjustment? I think one of the biggest things that I often see with people starting businesses is they spend the first like year or two just trying to figure out what is possible and what the opportunities are. So there's a huge period of just educating yourself, listening to podcasts, going out there buying books, attending events, attending conferences. And this is where a lot of people need to start just so that they can be aware of what potential opportunities there are for them.
Shad, I
Okay.
would imagine, like, as
Hang
I,
on. Bob, time out. I got to throw the plug in for Racheal, right? And if you want to hear her podcast, Promote Yourself to CEO, you can find it wherever you find podcasts at Promote Yourself to CEO, or go to the ceocollective.com/podcast. All right. I had to throw the plug in for her. She's been doing great so far. Go ahead,
well,
Bob.
so I'm just like, as I think about like your question and her answer, like that, you said, teachers, they could do tutoring, they could do like, that's that year or something that you're talking about there, Racheal, where it's like, let me just take the skills I know that are immediately transferable to something that I can replace a portion of my income with, right? And put those to work as I explore what other skills I have and how they might fit into the marketplace somewhere, right? So I think the obvious answer, Chad, in your case with a teacher, as we're using this example, is like, there's some obvious things I could do today. And what Racheal's saying is, don't keep yourself in that box limited by that label, because there's likely some other things, but it's going to take you likely some time to figure out, how do I monetize those other skills that I have to, not just the obvious ones.
Absolutely. And I'll give an example here. So, another fun fact about me is I also have a degree in music performance, as does my husband. That's how we met because we're both musicians. And so we have a ton of friends who went into music and became music teachers, band directors, etc. Some of our best friends from college quit their roles as band and orchestra directors after 20 years. And our friend Patrick started a home inspection business. What does that have to do with teaching high school band?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. But he sat down and thought about, what is it that I want to do? I want to make my own schedule. I'm interested in this. It's not that hard to get the certifications. Like, it costs a little money up front to get all the certifications. But then he realized, oh, I can do this really easily. And he has quickly built up his business doing home inspections and then layering on, drone photography and all this other stuff on top of it. His wife, Courtney, went a different route. She was also a music teacher. She's an orchestra teacher for high school. And she got burned out on it and had kids and needed something different. But you know what teachers are really good at? Keeping things organized, doing things on time, handling a lot of chaos and putting it together. So she started a virtual assistant business and very quickly built a book of business of people who were small business owners who needed that kind of behind the scenes support. She happened to have a blog that she started in college because we all had blogs in the early 2000s. And she had just kept doing it and doing it. So she knew enough about like WordPress and Canva and all these other things that now she was able to kind of take her organizational skills as a teacher and her personal interest and hobby as a blogger and turn that into a virtual assistant business.
You just
So
said
I've
a
seen
dangerous
this.
word. Bob's going to now talk for an hour about blogs.
Well, we had a company in the mid 2000s that, like, the entire company out of blogging. But yeah, we all
Okay.
have a blog.
So,
Chad, you got a
Racheal,
blog, don't
here's
lie.
a question that I've been waiting to ask. And beyond the obvious, right? Audience, I don't need you messaging me going, Chad, it's kind of obvious, right? What's the difference a woman from a man, right? We've got the obvious differences, folks. That's not what I'm
Sure.
asking about. Yet when you focus on working with women, okay,
Yeah.
what's really the difference with that you talk to a woman that you're specifically saying certain things that wouldn't be as impactful on a man, or that a man would be saying to her that isn't as impactful because they're used to talking to men without. I don't see a difference, right? To me, I
Okay.
was always raised that there's, the same. We don't treat women differently, and that's because my mom was got into business and did other things as well. Okay, what's the difference, men and women,
Yeah.
really?
And this is where we have to separate our personalized experience, where you had a mom who was a working mom and owned her own business, from the context and culture that we all live in. The context and culture that we all live in is that most of the work that is out there available expects women, especially mothers, to work like they don't have children and parent like they don't have a job. The amount of unpaid labor put on women is exponential. Women tend to be the primary caregivers, both for children and aging parents. Women tend to be the ones who take on the majority of domestic labor at home. So when I have conversations with women who are small business owners, some of the biggest challenges they are having is literally, how do I stay focused when I'm working from home, and the fact that I'm walking through my house and I can see that pile of laundry and I can hear that the kids need me and I can't make myself sit down because I was so conditioned to put everyone else's needs first. Women have traditionally been conditioned to be the people pleasers, the caregivers, the ones who sacrifice everything for everybody else. And as a business owner, you have to have really strong boundaries. You have to be able to say no. You have to be able to do things that are kind of against how many of us were raised. Whereas men tend to have a much easier time with this. I have so many clients who both their husband and the wife work in their own businesses, but the husband will have no problem going into his home office, closing the door, and not getting up at all when they can hear the kids or when they can hear that the delivery person
I
has
mean,
showed up.
I'll just tell you this is true. Like,
It's easier
it's by
because you don't
default.
feel guilt. Usually, and again, this is where it's context, big picture context. In general, men don't feel guilty for saying it's time to work. I'm blocking out everything else and just getting down to work. Whereas
It's just that
women,
men can compartmentalize and women don't compartmentalize the same. Because I was a single parent, right? And
sure,
when my daughter, I mean, yes, if she fell down and she was crying, okay, I went to get her. If she was bored, no, that's on her. Figure it out. Go entertain yourself. But I was a single parent. I'm a man, right? I obviously had to
sure.
deal with the laundry. I had to deal with the house. I had to deal with my daughter when she needed it, and I worked from home because I was in real estate sales at that time. I just
So you probably had a little bit more of an experience similar to what a working mom would have compared to a family where there's two working parents and the mom is the default and the
See,
father
that's
gets
that's
to
that's my family.
do
Like
what they need to do.
if I
Well,
was
go
being
watch Mr.
completely,
Mom with Michael Keaton from back in the '80s, and go live that life.
but if like so I have a my wife is a high a sales executive. She's like corporate sales. She does really well professionally, but like in our home, she is the one that deals with the kids' school, and
Yeah.
she's the one that cooks meals. No, she likes it, and she would, but and I do try to clean up. But like I could walk by the laundry. This is like the perfect. I could walk by that laundry for 2 months and never feel guilty about not folding it, not think twice about it, and go down to my office. Like the things you're saying, like they are real. Now, I'm not suggesting that like it's just the way it is. My wife's just got to deal with it, right? Like in our house, there's some tension though around like, hey, I need more help,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm like, here's my thing too, and this is I'm like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And my wife's like, I don't want to always have to be the one to think of the stuff to do, right? And there's this like tension there. And so I'm like, yeah, but you always think of it first. And it's so
So
like these.
that's a lifetime of conditioning. That is a lifetime of mental load and training. Simply look at toys available for boys and girls. Walk down the toy section of Target. You will see baby dolls. You will see vacuum cleaners. You will see play kitchens. Will boys play with those? Absolutely. But for most women, we were raised that way. even growing up, I'm the oldest daughter of an oldest daughter of an oldest daughter. I raised my sisters, and I know I did. I've been changing diapers since I was in elementary school.
Yeah.
Yet when we had kids, my husband had never held a baby before our own kids. So
Wait
it's
for
these,
Chad here, because I know he like I think your first comment was like the best comment made, which is essentially you have to separate like your own personal experience
yes,
from like the context of society, right? And so, Chad, not a traditional upbringing, not like you weren't not a traditional scenario where you were the primary caregiver as a single dad, right? Like you very much did not come in from kind of the baseline of society, right? In the 80s, your mom was a business person, and that was not very common for most of us kids growing up in the
yeah.
80s. Or I did have a single mom who was a business person, but man, it was a job, and she was running ragged, and she was always tired, and so I really appreciate that first comment you made, which is we have to separate like our personal experience from like the grander context of society. But
And we are seeing it shift. There has been a massive shift talking about, equality in the world starts with equality at home. And part of that is equality in the labor that happens at home. And like you said, your wife is also a executive who's out there with this incredible career, but she comes home and runs your life. When you're
Bob
asking,
means
can you
that though.
when you ask, can you make me a list? The reason it's so infuriating to women is because there's three parts to any domestic task, really any task. If you think about this in the context of your business too, you have to come up with the task, right? So you have to have the idea for the task. You have to notice this needs to get done. Then you have to do the prepping and planning of that, and then's the execution. So when you're asking her to make you a list, you're asking her to only give you 1/3 of the workload there for that specific task. She still has to come up with it, and she still has to plan it or prep it, writing down the list of what it is. And while that sounds small and simple, if you consider that over the context of everything that goes on, it's a lot. It's project management. It's so much labor. It's so much mental and emotional work. And that's where in my work with so many women, I have to help them understand that they have to come to terms with all of that and come up with better systems. We actually talk so much with our clients about using the same operational systems we do in our business at home and how much relief it gives when you start taking, instead of your team meeting, your family meeting. Instead of talking about systems that keep your marketing running and your sales running, now we're going to talk about systems that keep our personal finances running
our
and systems
laundry done.
that keeps the laundry done or the groceries purchased. And also, how can you streamline and optimize those systems, right? Like if it wasn't for the automation I can do in our life, I don't know honestly how I would be able to do all the things I do, but I have so much on auto ship that has reduced the mental load, has reduced the amount of work I have to do just to keep things going. And I think it's those little things where they might individually all seem like, this is so small. Why is this such a big deal? But if you want to see a woman completely turn into that, you know, head blowing up emoji, ask her to make you a list to help out.
Got it. No more lists. All right.
The other thing
So
you didn't even mention, you said 3 steps. The fourth step, which is then like
is
this is
praising
for
you for it?
no, my wife's then she's got this mental checklist of everything that needs to be done. And then she's got to like loop back around with me and be like, hey, did you get that thing done that I wrote you the list for? Right. So like it's checking the things off is like the last step where I don't know.
Well, Bob, then your wife's missing the easy part of that step because I know as soon as I get it done, I make sure Nita knows I got it done so that I get praised for doing it. It's like, honey, the garbage is out, right? And she's like, good
It's the
husband,
feedback
thank you.
loop.
yeah,
Right?
It's the
but
feedback.
so
She
there's
doesn't have to ask.
I'm like looking like I know she doesn't listen to our podcast, but I'm like she's back there somewhere. But wait,
All right. So Rachel, while Bob's hiding from his wife, look, I've got one more question I want to ask you, which is going to take probably the last few minutes of our call. Before we get to it, give me you have if people want to follow you, they want to connect with you, your website. You were talking about an event you have coming up that might have already passed by the time this drops or might be coming soon. Take your minute, give your little plug here.
Sure. Every year I run a absolutely free 5-day program called Plan Your Best Year Ever. And it's all about building a life first business for the year ahead where we're starting with your definition of success and then reworking your business to make sure your business will fully support it in your health, in your well-being, in your relationships, in your family life, at home. All of those things are just as important as being able to bring home the bacon and be the breadwinner for your family.
And to find out more about that, they go to
theceocollective.com/BYE for best year ever.
perfect. Okay. Here's the last question I want to ask you as we get to the end of this. Bob and I have both been big social media instructors. We have taught people for years how to use social media at a really high level. Bob and I have also gotten to a stage in our life where it's get off our lawn, right? We're at that guy stage where you just okay. You say TikTok is a must for growth-minded CEOs. I went on TikTok the day it opened or whatever.
Yeah.
Locked up my domain name on TikTok, which hopefully is still locked up since I've never checked an email from them, never been on. Tell me why and convince me that I need to add some social media domain that is about people doing the most ridiculous crap that I have no time to sit and watch.
So I absolutely love TikTok, and I do 0 lip syncing. I do 0 dances. I do 0 trends. What I do is provide great advice and content that will help solve a problem for my clients. And the reason TikTok is so powerful, and this is going to spill over, it already is spilling over into other social media platforms, is it's the first time we are going from an algorithm based way of getting content from people we've already followed or people we've already liked to having an algorithm giving us content based on our interest and our actions.
Yeah, I mean,
So
Instagram has almost fully switched to this model
it
where,
has.
if every 2 or 3 things you see is something they think you would be interested in. And by the way, you probably are.
Well, and we see it. Think about Netflix. You log into your Netflix account, it's showing you shows that things you'll be interested in. So this suggestion engine is now a discovery engine. And it's getting more and more expensive to show up organically in so many other platforms that have not adopted this yet. And ads are getting more and more expensive, that this is one of the easiest ways to get free organic traffic. And a lot of it is by leveraging what you know about SEO and keywords and using that to come up with content that people are actively searching for.
So the things
So
I would post on a Facebook reel or an Instagram story, which are content, not just, hey, I went to the beach and it was fun, but
yeah,
content. This is the stuff you're saying I should take the 30 seconds and go put it on TikTok as well, even though I don't want to go anywhere near it.
absolutely. And that's literally what I did. I usually do so many podcast interviews that when I decided to get on TikTok, I decided I was going to take the top questions I get asked in podcast interviews and just do 1-minute answers. And that's how I approached it to get started. And I have clients coming in and paying me 5 figures within 30 days of finding me on TikTok because it's very clear, it's very direct, it's no BS. And then they go from there. Honestly, the flow usually is they go from TikTok to my podcast, they'll binge listen to my podcast, and then they come find me. And they've already gotten so much insight and so much value that it really eliminates a lot of the fluff that they're seeing a lot of other places.
It's their interview process for you, essentially. It's
Yeah,
20 years ago, I'd go Google you, I'd read on your website, I'd maybe, if I was lucky, I'd find a YouTube video of you speaking at a conference or something, right? And today I'm like,
exactly.
all that stuff is being served to me when I'm on my couch at night because the internet understands that I need help with entrepreneurship and I'm a woman and you're somebody that's talking
And
about entrepreneurship from a woman's perspective.
literally, you can think of any topic you have an interest in learning more about, and you can find it on TikTok. I cannot tell you, I mean, clearly I'm a woman, but I listen to so much skincare and beauty content on TikTok, and I have bought so many things because of TikTok, because it's highly valuable content. But it's also you have to remember, we're business owners, not influencers. So I'm not here to sing and dance for everybody. I'm not, entertainment is not my primary function. Education is my primary function.
I
So as
think the
long
other
as you
thing
can
that
keep that distinction, it helps.
Chad, the other thing to think about there is most people, I would assume, I'm not speak for you here, Racheal, but you're not on TikTok to get 1 million followers.
No.
right? Like you'd be happy with 5,000 followers that all care about everything you put out, and 5% of those become clients of yours at some time.
Yes.
And I think that's the tricky part about the game you're playing there, is you think, oh, it's not working. I don't have 1 million followers. I'm not an influencer. Not necessary, right? Like, and that's the thing about TikTok, the Instagram Reels. You put your content there, it's going to find the people out there that are looking for, need that content, or searching for other similar things. I think I'm in agreement with Racheal. Chad, it's time that we get off our own lawns and figure this out.
It's all about being profitable, not being popular. As long as you get in front of the right people and they resonate with what you're talking about, they will want to take the next step and learn more about how to work with you.
All right, audience, let us know. Message me, what should we tick the talk thing, right? Whatever it is.
God, don't ever say that in front of your kid.
Got it. All right.
Like,
You'll be like an Ohio. You'll be an Ohio Rizzler or something. I don't know.
All right. So, Racheal, thank you so much for taking the time today, folks. The CEOcollective.com. You can connect with Racheal through there. You can find her podcast. You can find the program she talked about. It's all there for you. Bob and I are always here for you. We hope you shared this episode with someone who needs to hear it. We hope if you have not, for some reason, subscribed already, you click the little button. That way you never miss an episode, because you never know when greatness is coming. Yeah,
Racheal, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you today.
Racheal, we appreciate you taking the time with us today. And until our next episode, folks, as always, do good.